I listened to Ruby's inclusion story through her mother's perspective. Ruby was born with Down syndrome, and her mother had gone through difficult times because of the situation. When I was listening to the story, I used my knowledge and skill of deep listening and active listening to make meaning and understand her point of view. Listening involves someone's willingness to understand. There are some skills that I practice during listening. First one is paying attention. Be present and focus on the moment. I acknowledge that the goal of listening is to be able to connect. Therefore, it's beneficial to show respect, which allows me to empathize with the story and person. I nod when I understand, smile when I think it's relatable to my experience. Through time of listening to Ruby's mother, she had expressed herself not only through her voice, but also body language. The most impactful moment is how she showed her teary smile when realizing that Ruby, who is a child with special need, is now comfortably learning and being included among her peers. This made me realize how hard it must have been for her to hide her fears of Ruby being excluded and not valued. The story reminds me of my experience in my placement, where a child who has disability finally being comfortable in his learning experiences. Thus, I could feel how happy and proud Ruby's mother was to reach that milestone. Listening means that I should be open and should also recognize different languages and codes that others use to express and communicate. It means when I'm listening, I am ready to use all my senses, not only my ears to fully understand, also using my emotion to listen, by the influence of others' emotion. In inclusive learning practice, the willingness to listen is the most important skill for me as an educator because it enables the child's voice to be heard. In this experience of deep listening allows me to understand that it is not easy because it involves high level of awareness as well as the suspension of judgment and prejudices. We deal with certain children who are unable to communicate verbally yet. Hearing them in the whole sense and actually listening to what the children is saying through the gestures, behavior, and facial expression is the skill that myself as educator must master. As adults, we can assume that we know what a child thinks, feels, or sees. We can only tend to understand their world through their eyes if we take time to stop and listen. Observations will help me in genuinely understanding and getting to know the children whom I work with. I believe that the practice of deep listening is really important for me in providing inclusive learning environment, especially in building relationship and trust with families and children. I will use this skill to gain knowledge of children and family, to capture their interest, and observe messages through hearing, seeing, and feeling. Moreover, through listening, I will be able to recognize and respond to the barriers that prevent children from reaching their goals.